Welcome back to the Re-Entry Archive. This is The Path to War, a Psilocybin experience report taken from erowid.org. The following is a summary of my experience with Dragon's Dynamite magic truffles. I was already familiar with psychedelics, having used acid something like 7 times, mushrooms around 3 times, and Hawaiian baby wood roast once. I've never been able to experience psychedelics alone. I had heard it could be the best way to turn the trip into a deep, introspective experience, and because I wanted to answer some questions like, what is the goal of my life? What should I change to be happier? What should I do to be a better person? I decided I had to do it. A week before, I had ordered some magic truffles on the internet. I ordered 6 grams of dried truffles. Apparently it was equivalent to 15 grams of the fresh stuff. Taking the whole thing would be a strong trip, according to the seller. I decided to eat all the truffles at once. I have tried on different occasions to take half a dose and then redose, but it has always been disappointing. So here are the set and setting. I was tired after a week of stressful work, and I had been feeling anxious about taking the truffles. At 7 PM, I made the decision. This would be the night. I prepared a music playlist on my computer. I did some yoga exercises to relax before the journey, lit some incense, and ate the truffles raw. After having eaten half the stuff, I felt mild nausea. It was weird to feel it just a few seconds after chewing and swallowing. I had the feeling I'd poisoned myself badly. I forced myself to finish the whole thing. Then I turned the TV on immediately to watch The Simpsons, laugh, and forget the nausea, and wait for the effects to come on. It was 8:45. I went to brush my teeth in order to clean my mouth from the bad taste of the truffles. It helped to calm my nausea. I went back to The Simpsons. I noticed a subtle tremor, and I found I was laughing more easily than usual. The effects were starting to come on. 9:05. The Simpsons characters started having weird and scary faces. The colours were too strong, and the nausea was growing. I turned off the TV and put the playlist on to calm down. 9:09. Colours started to move mildly on one painting on the wall. I have never felt the effects of any psychedelic come on so quickly. I realised at this time it would be a mind-blowing experience. I wasn't scared, but it would have been a lie to say I was 100% relaxed. 9:11. My train of thought started to be disturbed. It was difficult to think about only one thing. I felt dizzy. I started to walk in the room, drawing circles, because I was sure it would help. It did. 9:13. I started to ask myself why I was doing this. Was this a good idea? Was I really prepared for this? This was stronger than anything I'd done before. I hadn't told anyone I was tripping tonight. The thought of this was frightening. Should I call someone and tell them? I started to laugh. Suddenly the situation seemed very funny. My mood was violently shifting second by second. 9:20. I started to feel the need to dance. It made me feel better. It was very enjoyable. I had the weird sensation of being one of these Indian women dancing to the sound of tablas and the sitar. I'm a man, but I felt like I was a woman at the time. It was weird but fun. Writing this in my diary, I realised that my perception of time was already distorted. 9:20. I have 2 houseplants, and I realise now that they were living beings, and the fact that I own them meant that I must take care of them. My mood was still violently shifting from good to bad every minute. I realised that mood was a critical component of our interpretation of reality. There were infinite ways to consider anything, depending on how you feel. I realised that making sure that I was in a good mood most of the time was really important. 9:34. I looked at my diary. My last note was only a minute earlier, but it seemed to have been at least 20 minutes ago. Anyway, I wrote down that I realised something really important about myself. I was always worrying too much about life. Instead of immersing myself in experiences and then learning from them, I always find myself asking too many questions, which in a way prevents me from truly living. I decided at this time that I would care less about asking questions and do more. At this time, it was really difficult to focus, and writing was taking a lot of time because I was always finding something better to write, and then write something completely different. I was telling myself all the time, man, write something, finish a sentence, worry about the rest later. 9:50. I realised something else. In my life, I always worry about a lot of things, but most of the time I worry because I don't like to do what the rest of my friends do. I don't like to go to bars to pick up girls. For me, this isn't how to start a relationship. I don't like to party every Saturday, because sometimes I just feel like relaxing and getting some rest. I was worrying about this, but I realised I do have the right to be myself, and to have my own principles and way to live. We're all different. Do your own thing. I decided I would listen to myself more instead of listening to other people. 10:30. Everything is coming on stronger. Feelings coming from the music. Hallucinations on every part of the room. Lights. I was feeling incredibly good. I wasn't worrying any longer. I started to feel really connected to other people and disconnected from my ego. I was used to this with mushrooms and LSD, but here the feeling of love and compassion was growing without limit. I was struck with the idea that every human being should have love and respect for their fellow man, and that the feelings of anger against others was evil. All I could feel was love. I spelt the word aloud, as if it helped me to understand the true nature of the word. I realised that every person must take care about the words they use. No one should offend anyone. Words can make people enemies, but enemies are only people who cannot understand each other. I realised that this was the path to war. I started to cry. The love was overwhelming. So at this time, I was unable to understand why people were killing each other. For what? For money? For food? For petrol? They knew which words to use. Perhaps people who needed something could get it from the people who have more. People who have a lot and want to steal from others are devils. I also realised that everyone should learn from other cultures. Otherwise, we won't be able to understand people who live differently, and this could serve as a route to misunderstanding. This is what leads to war. People say, war? Yeah, it's terrible, but it's not my problem. I already have a lot of problems to deal with. My problem? My? What was this my? We're all brothers and sisters on earth, because we all have the same parents. ancestors who lived thousands of years ago. We are all from the same family. I realised that my problems, like war, are only family problems, raised to a global scale. I started to understand clearly all those people dedicating their life to fight against war. Fight against war? It was nonsense. You cannot fight to calm people down. This is the root of the problem. Every problem must be dealt with in a non-violent way. At this time, I felt profound respect for Gandhi, who did lots of great things without fighting. I also realised I was still overwhelmed by love, but at the same time, scandalised and angry. Angry. It was disgusting to feel anger. I had practiced yoga every day to prevent myself from feeling things like anger. Eventually I realised that not only were we all from the same family, but we were from the same family as plants and grass and rocks and everything. We're all made from the same chemical stuff, neurons and protons, evolution of species and reproduction. We're all the same thing. The 7 billion people on this planet, basically the same person. We're all God. God is inside all of us, and God is pure love. I don't know how the idea of God came to me, but it did. It was pure evidence. I realised I had dedicated all my free time to pray. I had to connect to God as often as possible. Prayers and yoga, the goal is always the same. Connect to God, spread love all around, because God is love, and we cannot survive without love. Children of God are fighting each other and don't realise that parts of God are dying. I don't know if I believed in God before this moment, but I do from now on without hesitation. I realised that psychedelic songs are prayers. They relate the story of God in various ways. I realised that I might move to an ashram to dedicate my life to God. Those people living there have to understand what I just realised now. They spread love all around the world. I realised also that religions that use any kind of violence will fall because they're fighting for God. You can't fight for God. You just have to love. Praying is loving. The come down was okay. I felt starving. I had a beer and a meal and a cigarette. Back to normal life. I'm not going to move to an ashram tomorrow. I don't have any energy to consider this seriously just now. But for sure, I'm going to increase my practice of yoga and take care about the words I use and try to love people as much as possible. This is the only way for me to have a good life. In summary, taking psychedelics alone was a great way to solve some of my problems. Because it was a high dose, it helped me realise that I truly believe in God, and that I should try to care about others as much as I care about myself. I found that taking notes was essential to understand my train of thought during the trip. As I said, I was really surprised by the strength of the effects, mental and physical. If this had been my first experience, it could have been a really bad one. Enjoy your future psychedelic experiences, and take care. Love. This traveller encountered several archetypes on their journey, most notably the seeker, who was found on a search for profundity and meaning, the anima, which expressed itself through creative dance, the shadow, represented by the distorted faces of the cartoons, and the lover, who found overwhelming love for humanity, plants, animals, and even rocks. This traveller may wish to revisit this experience and engage in some shadow integration work. There may be utility in exploring the felt discomfort around being different and practicing saying no without guilt. They could also try to employ some mood awareness tools to track and consciously shift emotional states without repressing them. As with all psychedelic experience, it is necessary to try to avoid the pull of the spiritual ego. This is the element of the psyche that wants us to feel superior to others because of mystical insight. If left unchecked, the spiritual ego can work against and even undo integration. It is important to stay humble by remembering that psychedelic insight is the starting point, not the end.